we don't know what was actually lost for us. Those weren't just white spaces, they were African spaces, black spaces too. Black crafts have made that building an extraordinary building. What I am angry about is the way that history was treated. They didn't even release the names or talk about the names of the enslaved, but they had the names of the damn oak trees.
We're ready. We're prepared. Do not give in to fear. We are fearless. This is not the time to be afraid. This is a time to stand up and fight back and to resist any temptation for them to divide us. We're in this together. The rule of law is on our side. We will not give in, not give up. We will not capitulate. We will not bow. We will not bend. We will survive.
You had quite a different take on the burning down of the Nottoway Plantation than I did. I was sharing all of the memes of Harriet Tubman and Frederick Douglass, all the people taking pictures and bringing hot dogs, and I was in it. I was joyful, just by the thought of maybe our ancestors saying, no, not today. You're not going to have another wedding here.
I wasn't into it. I was into it because number one, I'm a historic interpreter, and we often work in context of genealogists, of preservationists, not genealogists, cultural historians, material culture anthropologists, et cetera. We all work to kind of work in the same universe. And for me, and I did a piece for MSNBC about this. But for me, here's the issue. People were saying, well, I'll do three parts. First issue is we don't know what was actually lost for us. Those weren't just white spaces, they were African spaces, black spaces too. Black crafts have made that building an extraordinary building. What I am angry about is the way that history was treated. They didn't even release the names or talk about the names of the enslaved, but they had the names of the damn oak trees. See, I believe that my presence in some of these spaces, not just as a consultant, but as a visitor. Before I was doing this professionally, I was a visitor, and I had it out with some people. I would not hesitate to tell them the truth about themselves and say, no, we're not
Yeah,
doing this today.
but Michael, you been to Nottoway?
I'm not, no, and I didn't
Okay,
go to Norway for the very
okay.
reason because they only did one side of the story, and
That's
I
what I'm
would have
saying. So
been
so
very angry.
why are we trying to hold on to even the things when they're having weddings and hundreds of people
Okay,
coming through there, not even getting the real history? Who
yes,
cares? I mean,
Karen, I understand that, but you know something? If you know what my issue was, people basically going burn them all down. That was a lot. That was a thread through a lot of pieces. And not everybody said that, but you know what? They do that in Monticello and Mount Vernon too. They do that at all these places. The problem is that these people who are running the spot would begrudgingly mention this after the place had burned. And I'm just like, no, 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 no. Y'all could have been telling the truth. You didn't want to. When they're selling a fantasy, they're selling a Moonlights and Magnolias Gone with the Wind fantasy that they know white people, especially European tourists, will eat the hell up. And let's be really, let me be really blunt with you. Here in the South, you have the landscape has changed immensely, especially because there's monoculture, industrial ag or farming has been shipped away. So what do they have left? These colonial and antebellum estates. That is the American Downton Abbey. And as a place for every single one of them, every single one of them has had their moment as a white supremacist shrine. And at the same time, our stories and our lives have been obscured. I was, if I'm happy by anything, I'm happy about the fact they lost their livelihood. But I'm not subscribing to the idea of the ancestors burning it down, a clinic. I told people, I said, okay, we need to get a 101 on African spirituality. I said, we don't, in the African tradition, we don't cleanse through fire and air. We cleanse through water and earth. That's very important. One woman said to me, oh, you're being disrespectful to the ancestors because they burned it down. It doesn't, baby. I said, they could have burned it down during the Civil War. They could have burned it down anytime they wanted to. They also could have done a bunch of other stuff to it. But guess what? It didn't happen. It didn't happen that way for a reason. And she said, well, I said, have you done divination to understand? Have you cast your shells? Have you spoken to the diviner? Have you spoken to the babalao? Have you spoken to the dibia? As you said, you're being performative. I said, no, I'm not. I've been to West Africa 8 times. I went there because there were parts of our story that we never received that I had to learn from our own people in our own place. I understand when people are joyful and angry. I don't besmirch them that. I really don't. It's the people who were just like, talking about Frederick Douglass. Well, Frederick Douglass did something really bizarre to us in his lifetime. When he was an older man, you know what he did? He went back to White House Plantation, one of the most stately plantation houses in all of Maryland. Absolutely stunning. And he knew who built White House Plantation. But he didn't go there with the same mentality as us. For him, it was his home place where he started. And when you read the narrative of Frederick Douglass, he doesn't say those damn people. What he actually says is, we lived in a grand estate. And even though he did not live in that big house, it's a very different mentality that I think people don't really understand the answers as well as they think they do. They're not like us. They're not like us. We are from them, and we draw so much of our strength and our spirit, and even some things that we can recognize from them. But average enslaved person was very proud of their work, even though they knew they were being exploited. They knew they were being exploited. But they always say, "That's my window. That's mine. I did that. They didn't do that. I did that." And so it's very complex. I'm not going to be. But okay. Here's the thing.
Let me ask you
Yes.
something.
Yes.
Michael W. Twitty is here. There is a catharsis given the times that we're in when there's a feeling that the hands of time are being rolled back and we are being thrown and cast into this, oppression that we thought we overcame,
Right.
and held hands. And now we're here having to fight for the liberations that my grandparents fought and won. We're having to fight these things. And I think the burning down of the Nottoway was symbolic, and it felt like a victory, even though everything that you're saying, I completely understand what you're saying. But in this time, some joy and catharsis. Can we have some joy and catharsis?
Not on this one, because guess what? I hear that. I understand it. This is more about who's in the other big White House built by the enslaved than it is about Nottoway.
Which was
It
also
really
burned.
is.
Which was also burned.
Which was also burned, but not by the damn British. But I guess
But we showed them how. Okay.
Karen, if there's nothing else we can say to this, cousin, family, I want our people to hear this. Symbolics will never trump systemics. When I popped onto this call, you were talking about systemics. You were talking about strategy and systems, and from the local to the county to the state to the federal. Systemics are not sexy. Yes, okay, great. I remember a couple years ago I saw three little sisters dressed up for Halloween as hidden figures. I didn't even get named. I got hidden figures. But I'm like, you know what figures I care about? Them grades, the money poured into their schools, the scholarships they're gonna receive. I could care less about who they dress up as. That's symbolic. That's not systemic. I had a beautiful call. I think it's been recorded. I'll send you the link once I know it's formalized. But it was the descendants group out of Louisiana, the two twin sisters who actually bought the plantation, where their ancestors were enslaved, and a couple other folks, Joe McGill, Jerome Bias, Sister Honore who used to give tours of Destrehan Plantation where her ancestor was enslaved. And you know something? A lot of things that we're saying now, we were saying on this program, but what was so powerful. What was so powerful is that it's hard work to buy these places, maintain them, the taxes, the this, the that. Those systemics are far more important than symbolic. I get it.
You're right.
We are suffering right now. We are not just suffering physically, suffering mentally from this nonsense. And having that victory gave us something. But I would rather us reframe it in terms of not burning the plantation down, as opposed to, and by the way, we weren't all enslaved on plantations. We were enslaved in cities, in mines, in turpentine camps, in small farms where there was only one or two of us. But people don't have that cultural literacy. It's hard. Yeah, I can't watch, for example, Karen, I can't watch cooking shows. I get so angry. I'm like, "Ah," every 5 seconds is torture for me, not because of technique, or just because the judginess or whatever. And it's hard for me to be engaged in these conversations all the time, even though I have to be, because people's cultural literacy just isn't in the same place
Yeah.
that it should have been. I mean, I saw that when I saw Sinners twice, right? And I was just like in awe, and I was in love. When I would read people's descriptions of how they experience it, and I was like, I can't, because I don't want to be that one. I'm gonna let you be in blissful peace wherever you at in your life. But I mean, there's a reason, why I look at this and go, listen, you don't know, because they didn't have black staff to handle or even talk about us. Even that's not the talking; it's about the knowing. I was in South Carolina. It was the Aiken Red House, one of those big houses down there. And they took me to the kitchen because they said, okay, the kitchen was divided from the rest of the house. And the wing that it was in, it was rare. Kitchens in the South were rarely in the house. There was always a wing or a separate building. And they said they found a rat's nest in there. And I was like, okay, a rat's nest. Who cares? Then they showed me the rat's nest. You know what the rat's nest was made up of in the kitchen? Pages from the speller, the blueback speller from the 1800s. In other words, they were teaching each other how to read and write under cover of darkness. And if they didn't have that space, they never would have known. I've seen crystals, I've seen power objects, I've seen spiritual caches from these spaces that tell about our story and our longing and our lives. My first thought was, which one of those burned down? Because they were there. It's Louisiana. They had the religious and spiritual things there in that space, but now they're destroyed, and I'll never know. Well, maybe we might never know what that was. I cannot mourn for these history pimps, the one who go out there and
Oof.
say we gonna have Greek
Oof.
revival mansions and have people dressed up in crinoline dresses showing you the property, but never talk about us. And I've seen some change, but now, if nothing else, like I said in the MSNBC piece, if this is a wake up call to every single other place, and they're not just in the South, but most of them are, then that's the best thing we can hope for. I want more. I've said this for years. I want more of our children as docents and as junior interpreters. I want more black craftsmen and craftswomen hired in these spaces. I want there to be programs where we train people how to do these things, because we were master craftsmen. My friend Jerome is a carpenter, and he's worked with Old Salem, other places. And it was him that told me, he said, Thomas Day, the black carpenter, lived in antebellum times. He probably did a plurality of carvings that were reflective of his African heritage, but a lot of those things were destroyed. And so we have to know what we're dealing with in order to make a cogent argument and defend ourselves. And like we started off our conversation, Karen, by saying the names. First thing we got to do, instead of just saying they burn it down, is get those 120 names, and they exist, and say them, and
Agree.
ask, who are the descendants?
Yes. Yes. All right, I say corrected.
We're ready. We're prepared. Do not give in to fear. We are fearless. This is not the time to be afraid. This is a time to stand up and fight back, and to resist any temptation for them to divide us. We're in this together. The rule of law is on our side. We will not give in, not give up. We will not capitulate. We will not bow. We will not bend. We will